to see you, Regina.
Mhm. All right, so I guess we can go ahead and get started. Oh, Kristen, is it cool if we could go ahead and get started?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah,
Okay, no, you're
go
good.
ahead. Let's go
All
ahead.
right, well, welcome, ladies, to Woman's Place is in the Struggle. I'm your host, Kim. I'm an educator here in Brooklyn. I've been volunteering for Kristen for about probably like a month and a half or so, and she's given me the honor of hosting these talks, which is great, and I'm super excited about it. Kristen, did you want to say anything since it's
Yeah.
recorded?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just say so Women's Places in the Struggle, the whole mission and purpose behind it was to have a conversation that centers us as those of us who are femme of center. We have also opened it up to those who are gender nonconforming,
Mhm.
and it's just that so often we have conversations, especially political conversations, and we'll have a centering of mostly male voices, and somehow that's what's seen as politically strong and right
Mhm.
and what have you. It also translates to what we have in our political system, which is an overrepresentation of men. So the whole purpose of Women's Places in the Struggle is to say, let's find ways to flip that and to dive into that and to disrupt that with female leadership and female voices, femme of center voices, non-traditional leadership, and to see what we come up with in terms of our thoughts and ideas around policies and the issues of the day. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nice. So our first question, which kind of ties in to tomorrow's event too, is once hopefully Biden is elected and Harris is elected, how can we hold them accountable to our demands for change? Is the first question.
I don't I don't know how to hold elected officials accountable other than calling them and showing up and yelling at them, much like I did yesterday to our current council person. I don't, I mean, I've been calling and writing and yelling the government since I was 14. So that's my route, but I'm very much open to hearing other ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that's one route is to pay attention and nag your official, especially your local elected officials. So I'm
Yeah.
really glad to hear that because that needs to happen, especially in this district. You know, I've been very open about the lack of constituent services and the lack of attention and response. So uh, I'm glad to hear that's happening. It's necessary. Um, yeah, I mean, I have other thoughts, but um, I'll wait and see what others have to say first.
I mean, yeah, same. I think it's the best way to do it. Well, another way of doing it too is if you're a particular person that gives to these politicians and you're, quite a bit of money, you can withhold that money, and you could say, hey, if this isn't done, I'm not giving to you. Or, obviously you can say, well, I'm not voting for you next year. Or, all of those different routes. Those are some things that I've heard people do, which is pretty good, especially the money part. I was like, oh, okay, I like that. Money speaks, it's a big motivator for people. So yeah.
That's why the NRA is really strong within the
Yeah.
federal government.
Yeah.
Money.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to hear the thoughts because I think to me, holding the federal government accountable always
Mm-hmm.
feels particularly intangible and
Yeah.
to do. Like I sort of know how to contact my local officials and how to speak directly to their offices, but when we get up to a federal level, I think it's harder for me to wrap my brain around what that looks like.
Sure.
Yeah.
I made a whole Google document that's like, here's how to call everybody. And one vacation I was in DC, I family lives in DC. I just went to their offices in
Oh.
DC because their office buildings, all they did was like x-ray my backpack because like it's heightened security. But then I just like showed up in offices and they were like, hi, how can we help you? So they like, I was like, okay, they want to hear from us. It's hard to wrap your mind around like calling over every little issue, but that's what I do.
That's great. I like that. Just show up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think some of the, what I was going to say about thoughts is that I think some of the strongest things we can do are collective measures. And when people hear on a national level, definitely, but on a local level as well, when the reps hear from multiple people and the fire is on, that's when I think we get some of the accountability. So things that involve a lot of us, you know. So for example, we weren't particularly successful, but when the curfew was happening here in New York, and it was really less about COVID and more about criminalizing movement and stopping the Black Lives Matter protests, we did a mass letter writing campaign to de Blasio and sent like literally thousands of letters that just said, hey, you need to lift this and also do better.
Yeah.
Like, and we, and there I know around defunding, we did a whole bunch of texting and calling. So again, in mass, like day of the budget day, everybody lobby, everyone call and text. So I don't know if we always get the results we want with things like that.
Yeah.
But we do get the issues addressed. And that's the part that I do like about it, is like whenever you have the mass movement, whether it's letters or calls or protesting in the streets, there is a demand that has to be addressed. Like the official has to respond, right?
Yeah.
So like in this district, you know, I definitely don't like the response, because the response was our councilman voted for this past budget. But there had to be a response, and there was attention paid to the issue, you know, and for many elected officials, it held their feet to the fire because they had to come up with some sort of response and justify why they voted yes or no.
Yeah. So to go back to the question, like, how would we be able to hold Biden and Harris accountable for, you know, what they're saying? Like, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, right? Especially with what's going on with the police brutalities, and like that's the focus, right? I guess you know, at the moment, and there's other stuff going on too. So I'm just wondering, what can we do as a people? Do we need to band together, send out a bunch of letters to them? You know, I'm just wondering what would be the steps to address, to go to that level, the federal level. You know what I mean?
Well, I think the best thing we can do is keep the pressure on with the protests that we have seen throughout the nation, because as we do those protests and we get the media attention, that keeps it a national issue, that keeps it something that has to be addressed. And I think, you know, right now the pressure is super on for Biden and Harris to address police brutality and the most recent incident, and to come out and say something, you know, because there's just a lot of demand for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And we shouldn't be scared to do it once they're in office. Shouldn't, you know, I think that's another piece of it too, is that we not shy away from it. And that's one of my biggest fears, honestly, especially as someone who's very progressive and has a vision for real, radical, lasting, meaningful change. One of my biggest fears is that we will succeed in voting out Trump, and then we won't keep it going.
Yeah.
Absolutely have to vote out Trump, but we also
Yeah.
absolutely have to keep it going.
Keep it going. I agree. That's the thing. How do you keep the momentum going? I was talking to a friend about that. Like, you have to keep it going. We're not done, you know. There's so much more to be done, you know. And so yeah, I agree. Just keep it you know, just keep going, because we're, you know, we have a mission.
I honestly
Go ahead.
think thanks to pandemic, more people have time to actually pay more attention to these issues.
Yeah.
And they're not going to let it go away. Yes, the momentum will wax and wane just because we're humans.
Yeah.
But this one feels different than other movements I've seen.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree too. I guess we'll move on to the next question. It's on voting. So I've had different conversations with people with voting, and it's been a frustrating talk. But the question is, how can we make sure everyone in our district or neighborhood, despite what's happening with the post office, how we help them to be able to vote? That includes like seniors and in the immune compromised. If the post office is acting a fool, how do we get these votes out? You know what I mean?
I mean, I know New York, Cuomo just signed a bunch of things to make it easier for us to vote by mail or get absentee ballots, but I don't know that info has gotten far and wide. So maybe there's like how to do that and like figure out drop off points, because I know you can drop off your ballot at early voting sites now and all that. I don't know.
Yeah.
How do we like physically get people the ballots and take them to the polls?
Yeah.
They don't know how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that, and I you know, there's things I still have to learn about, like what the ballot drop-offs like actually look like and how that functions. But I was like curious if you could actually organize like pickup services for people, so that you're like picking up a bunch of people's ballots and taking it to their site for them, rather than them having to rely on the mail. Didn't know if that was possible or not.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, we're actually exploring that idea because it came up in a different community conversation. And I think it would make a huge difference. You know, what we know we can't do is we can't bring ballots to people, but we are exploring that question of, if they request the absentee ballot and they get the ballot, can we then have volunteers or have support from the community to deliver that ballot to the voting site? So that call will go out. If that is something we're able to do, we will be calling for volunteers to do that, because I definitely, I think that's one of the ways we can fight the general voter suppression is you know, collectively helping to like deliver ballots. Definitely agree with what Regina said about the information itself getting out. Yes. And so that's a big piece.
Yeah. So what's one way we can get the information out to people?
Like, is it just a flyer everybody's door in the district? Like, you know, like
it could be Instagram. I mean, I don't know.
I've been sharing stuff all the time on Instagram, but you know.
Yeah. We are putting it in, actually next week will be the first week that we're trying this out, but we're putting both voter registration and census info into our outreach efforts. So on Tuesdays when we go out and canvass, we do talk about Kristen for Harlem and my campaign, but we are also giving people the voter information and the census information. And we're starting that next Tuesday. And, you know, we'll see. I mean, I would love for there to just be info at everyone's door. I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, what do we value and where do our resources go? I mean, this is a constant refrain for me. It's like, we do collectively have the ability to actually mail everyone a ballot. not even just the request, like you have to apply for it and then you
Yeah.
get it, but actually mail people the ballot, you know?
Yeah.
And it's something that AOC suggested, and I agree. You know, she was saying, why wouldn't we set up a system where we simply mail the ballot? And so all you would have to do is respond and send it back, as opposed to right now you have to request the application, you have
Yeah.
to fill the application out, you have to send
Mhm.
the application, then you get a ballot, then you send the, you know, we have made it harder and more
Yeah.
you know.
I have friends in, or is it Washington or Oregon? They just, every registered voter gets a ballot for every election there. And they have like a 90% turnout rate because it's all mail. They just fill it
Oh,
out and send it
Proof it
back.
can
It's
be
amazing.
done. Proof it can
Yeah,
be done and
it
proof
can.
that it works, you know.
what district? I'm sorry, where is that?
That was in like Washington State or Oregon.
Is that
There-
Republican or Democrat? I don't
It's
remember.
everybody.
Everybody?
It's like, yeah, I mean, everybody, especially for the general, you just, if you're a registered voter, you get your ballot. And
That's
I don't
awesome.
know if their primary is caucus or, party. Who knows? Everybody does that differently.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's definitely something we should explore for voters here, you
Mhm.
know. Just get your ballot. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nice. So the other question is kind of stemming from that, like recent news stuff. So I'm sure everyone's heard of what happened with Jacob Blake, and I've been reading different things, and I noticed that there's been a lot of like weird information and misinformation, and it's like I I hate seeing things like, especially what happened with George Floyd, where the thing was, oh yeah, he died, but he did this, so he must have deserved that. Does that make sense? Just,
Mhm.
oh well, look, oh well, he had drugs in his system, so it's like always like some type of like excuse for a reason why somebody has died. So I was talking to a friend about this, and it's an outrage. It's literally an outrage. So it's just like, how do you, and I'm curious to get your point of view when you have to talk to people and you have to tell people, hey, that's really no reason why this person should have died. Like, the cops are not there to be the judge and jury, but still we're getting the misinformation. We're getting, messages from people saying, well, this person deserved to die because they resisted arrest or whatever.
That's not the system.
It's so frustrating. And how can we help people see, I guess, the truth? Or how can we maybe just digress and maybe just like take care of ourselves and not like get involved with crazy? Like, I'm just curious to know what you do when you're having to speak to people about that.
I mean, I don't keep my cool at all. Even with my mom tried to tell me that the protesters were rioting, and I was like, Mom, I've been to a bunch of them. We're not.
Yeah.
We're not. And then when I talked to her, she was like, you're right. I was like, yeah, you're watching one news and you're not.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know. I think some people are going to be so entrenched in their idea that they're never going to change their mind.
Yeah.
The same way I'm never changing a diehard Trump supporter. No one's changing my like progressive, super liberal views.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I don't know either.
Like yelling at people isn't a helpful answer, but that's what
I know. Even though it feels good, but
Yep.
but yeah.
Yep.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know. I was just gonna say, like, I think especially when I'm talking to other white people, I try to remind them that this is not the way the system works for white people, and like
Yeah.
white people actually like go through like jury to trial system. Like we don't just shoot them. Like, and like that's a ridiculous concept that
Yeah.
like someone would have like done something wrong or whatever. And even the fact that we're focusing on that is detracting from
What happened?
what happened in the first
Yeah.
place.
Mhm.
But yeah, taking it back to like the just insane disparity, especially with white folks, is I find useful.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think the media has really kind of helped with, like, it's helped and then not helped. Let's put it like that. Like, it's kind of a double-edged sword. So, you know, it's good about putting out information, but sometimes it could be skewed. So it's, and I was telling a friend, like, don't throw your energy into people that aren't going to listen to you. Put your energy in people that are going to listen to you. Because he's like frustrated. He's like, guys, they're not listening. I can't believe they keep telling me this. And I'm like, pause. Just get your energy into something else, because it's a waste of time, you know, to try and convince someone, because he's trying to convince older Black men to not fall into that mindset of like, oh, well, he must have had drugs on him and that's probably why he got killed. Like, even in our community, we're thinking that, like, some of us are, which is very frustrating. But yeah.
Yeah, I think and this is a tough question for me personally, especially as I'm running for office. So it's something that I do think about often, and it's something we've even talked about in our street team efforts. If you're sitting if you're on the street corner and you're talking with someone and you're trying to convince them to sign up, at what point do you pull the plug? You know, you say, I'm for a candidate that wants to defund NYPD and instead fund affordable housing and education. And then, you know, they get into, some people say, oh, that's amazing, sign me up, right? That's great. But there are others who then want to get into, well, why would we take money away from police, you know? Which is always a crazy question for me, because they're so extremely vastly overfunded that I just, like, why wouldn't we take money away from the police? Because even if you're not a full-blown abolitionist like myself, you certainly must be able to look at the fact that there's just an extreme budget here. There's just way too much city money here. But anyway, I think it all goes back to fear. And so when I do have conversations with people, I try to find like that emotional root that I know is about like fearing for safety. And it is a scary thought. Like, one of the things that helps me is to realize that it is a scary thought to realize that our supposed safety net, or the thing that has been presented to us as a safety net, is unsafe, you know? And that is something that a lot of our community and people of color have known for a long time. That's definitely harder to convince others sometimes of that fact. And then even within the community, I find there's a weird delusion, even when I talk with particularly older Black family members, Black community members. I'm still fighting what I feel like is this fear of the other. Like, the racism has become so entrenched that we now have a fear of each other, of like ourselves, of our neighbor. We have a fear in our own community, of our fellow community member. And you know, that's going to take work to address. And I think sometimes the quick answer is, well, if there's police and they just act right, then I can just call them and that will address the issue. And it's never going to work. We are going to have to address the root issue.
Yeah, definitely.
My sister also has a tactic she uses when one of our uncles says something slightly racist, but she knows like he's just parroting something, she'll be like, oh, I don't understand, explain it to me. And then they have to walk through their explanation of something, and she's like, huh, okay, bye, and then just like shuts it down that way. So maybe there's that in there when people are like, this is this thing. It'd be like, no, wait, explain to me why he deserved that. No, and like throw it back on them to explain it.
Exactly. And I also was trying to explain to people too, like, what makes you so good? How do I know you don't have drugs on you? How do I know you're not doing, like, I don't really know you like that either. So does that mean you deserve to die? Does that mean you deserve to get shot by the police? Yeah. Like, stop acting like you're this angel. Like,
yeah.
Just stop. Like, you know, so they just try to turn it around people to like, oh yeah, duh, you know? But, all right. So the next question is, what do you see as the U.S. or New York's role in combating human trafficking, also known as modern day slavery? And how can we hold city officials accountable?
Well, we definitely have to see it and name it more. It's not a conversation that I feel we're having enough of. And I think, you know, we have to also be able to name the root as capitalism, and really talk about like what that means, that we've come to a world where like everything is about money, including like women's bodies and children's lives have become, you know, about this exploitation and this system of money. And we've gotten so far away from humanity, from human connection, from people first, that we're now in this place, you know, and we have folks who are dehumanizing others with the human trafficking. And then we have a response to human trafficking that, if we ever even really address it, is also dehumanizing. So we just sort of like keep going in this weird cycle of violence, instead of I believe taking a real step back and saying, okay, so how does this develop? Where does it come from? And it comes from a lot of times like the lack of resources, the lack of support, the lack of family structure, the lack of a communal social safety net. So those are all the things we have to build up. Like, I want to talk more about human trafficking, and I also don't want to keep having the conversation of how we punish the human traffickers. I want to talk more about human trafficking in a way that is like, how do we actually prevent that from happening? How do we actually stop like harm before it happens? You know?
Yeah. I agree. Definitely like talking more about it and more awareness. I think it's on the back burner, you know, right now, but I do tend to bring it up in my Facebook, like, hey, like, this is still an issue. You know what I mean? We don't want to forget, like, you know, children are at risk, you know, they're probably the highest at risk because they're moldable, you know, and they are, you know, they stay in that business for a long time, you know? So it's, you know, it's just one of those things I feel like people are uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for people to think about and to like process and to like try and figure out a way to somehow be the advocate. Is something I've noticed people are having an issue with. Just talking about it, it's uncomfortable. It's like, oh, really? Like, wow, you know, how do I become an advocate to this? Or, you know, so I mean, holding officials accountable, I would say just keep putting it in there. Either keep tweeting it to them, keep like keeping it alive so it's on their mind. And you know, having correct information as well out there. Statistics are always a big one that people, respond better too. Statistics are always like, whoa, you know, I didn't know this was a really big issue. So anyways, that's how I feel keeping the city officials accountable might help.
It also feels like, I mean, I know it happens, and it probably happens a lot more in New York City than other places. It just feels like it should be almost a more obvious thing. Like, you should see someone getting stolen, but that's not how it happens. That's just not how it happens. But I think people have, myself included, have an idea of what human trafficking looks like that's not correct. And again, I agree with Kristen, like, solving the root of the problem may make the problem better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even just thinking about like my lack of knowledge about the issue, it just like strikes me how much visibility is important to that conversation, and like keeping it at the forefront. I mean, like in people's minds, and making sure that it's visible, because it's so like it's invisible.
Yeah.
It's so underground that yeah,
I think also like real visibility around it, rather than like what all the conservatives were trying to yell about on social media the past few weeks of like human trafficking, it's this many kids. And I listened to a lot of politics podcasts, and they did sort of like took their numbers that the Republicans said, and then it was like, if that number is true, we shouldn't have any children left. You know, they should all be trafficked at this point. So like, think a little bit about what your the like real visibility over what's happening. And some of it is nebulous and hard to figure out, but there's some places that know what they're talking about.
Yeah. To Kristen's point, getting to the root. So I guess I feel like with some of the stories I read where parents were giving away their children because they didn't have any money, you know, that's an issue if they don't have any money. So we have to address that. Or runaways is a big one. So how can we address where the children feel safe at home? Is it a domestic violence issue? Is it what's happening for them to run away? Like, so there's just so many different like things that we have to kind of pick apart, right? If we're gonna get to the root of it, you know?
I appreciate you saying that. I think that's the key, is naming and then figuring out, okay, so how do we politically address those things, and then call upon officials to really address those things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question is, I'm an educator, so one of the questions I had was, how can we have the students still get the best and highest education being remote in low income areas? Like, what are some ways that we that they can get the best and highest education?
Well, I don't have any children, so I don't have any. I don't know.
I mean, as a teacher, I will say that some of the things that I think would help teachers who are engaging in remote learning are some of the things that I've advocated for years for teachers in non-remote learning, which is more prep time, more support, and more like resources, and more time to really plan the lessons in a way that is just socially and emotionally and culturally responsible to the students they have, and less students, a smaller classroom. So like all those pieces that we lobby for in person, I think that it to some extent really gets exacerbated with the remote learning. And then also laptops, which we see can be done. Just want to say. So we have for decades had this fight in the education system where we're trying to get students laptops, saying that it is it is part of the educational need and the huge achievement gaps in students who are resourced enough to have a personal computer and those who aren't.
Yeah.
And for years and years and years, it's been, we don't have the resources, we don't have the ability to give students laptops. So one of the things we have seen with COVID, and there's still a ways to go, but we should not go back, is that we have given kids and families laptops. Absolutely. And we should not go back. And there was also internet availability, free internet given to the students, and we should not go back on that either. So some of these are things we have to be sure that we say, like these things help with remote learning, and they also would help with in-person learning, and we need to keep that stuff up and support the teachers more. Support the teachers with it. Yeah.
Amen.
I have a friend who believes. Amen. Teachers are amazing right now. I don't know how. I have a friend who's trying to advocate in Philadelphia to make internet a basic utility that just is run to every house. And I think that's a really interesting idea that clearly already is there, but it should just be part of. We don't need ground phone lines anymore. We need internet.
Yeah, that's a great idea, actually.
Yeah,
I like that.
I agree with it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, did you want to say any? Sorry, I thought you were gonna say.
No, education is out of my wheelhouse.
It's all good. Another question I have is, what can be done practically to help those that are struggling to pay rent or just stay afloat during this time of the pandemic? Whether it be the city, whether it be like, what can be done?
Everything.
I'm scared to see cancel rent not going anywhere. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, but just the fact that there's so much suffering and like so much struggling going on, businesses to people's ability to pay their personal rent, and the government is literally doing nothing. Really insane. And we've been pushing cancel rent since March and August, and it's really baffling to me that there has not been more of an effort to try to figure out what landlords need and what tenants need, and how the government can come to aid in any.
I completely agree, and I have put out 2 cancel rent statements, and I'm sure there will be more because this is a continuous issue. It's a huge problem. And it's, I really don't understand. I really don't, because there is the ability to have a rent forgiveness, to have cancel rent, and to still support. The biggest pushback I hear is that some of the smaller landlords will not be able to pay, say, their mortgages. There's definitely a way for us to structure that canceling rent. And that would also help those who have to pay mortgages, I mean, we just need to figure that piece out. But the vast majority of the time, what we are talking about is that this landlord's ability to continue to make money is somehow more important and more valuable than this person having a home. And housing is a human right. That's just simply not a correct equation. It's not. It's not. And I've said this in speeches, and there was I remember I got a question one time that was saying, oh, but then what would the landlords do to make money? And I said, they're going to be all right. They're going to be all right. They're okay. I heard my whole point. They are okay.
I
mean, need plenty of money.
I mean, I get the point of the ones that, maybe own one building and they're barely keeping afloat themselves. I mean, I can understand that, but like you said, there's going to be stuff in place to help them. So I mean, I don't get it either. I mean, what's the other alternative? Have everybody on the street? It just doesn't make sense to me. You know, I just don't know why they just can't get that
That's
stuff
honestly
done.
where we're heading.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
like
also like,
where we're going with this
Yeah.
to
and
eradicate
yeah,
homelessness and people literally on the street. And that's how we have such a homeless population right now.
Yeah.
Because again, we've decided that somehow people making money is more important than the human life, and it's not, you know. And yeah, I think it's obscene. I really do. And I'm not falling for the small pennies that a couple officials are doing here and there, where they might send some rent relief over here, over there. You're still reinforcing the overall
Yeah.
system.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're taking tax dollars from the people to pay landlords. And it's like, we just need to really just stop. Just
Yeah.
stop. Just stop.
also like nobody's moving to New York City in the next year. You put
Yeah.
people out, ain't nobody's gonna pay the rent. Like,
Yeah. A lot of people
you're
moved
not
out.
gonna,
Yeah, that's right. A lot of
yeah,
people moved out. I mean, so I don't know what they're thinking. You know? And then I talked to some
money, like
people,
Kristen said.
yeah, but it's like, but if nobody's coming to, you know, there's no tourists right now. There's no, so I,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But it's just frustrating.
yeah.
But yeah. So the last question is, how can we, what can we do to progress Black Lives Matter? So progression meaning go beyond the marching and beyond the voting. What else can we do? Because, you know, things aren't happening. People are getting frustrated. People are losing patience. I was telling somebody the other day, if they don't move fast enough, this kind of stuff breeds vigilantiness. Like people are just going to start. I mean, you saw what happened in Wisconsin. People are just going to start just doing crazy stuff, taking guns, like, oh, I'm going to take the law in my hand. I got this, you know, like it's what's going to start happening. And it already has. So I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, what can we do to progress Black Lives Matter movement further? A friend of mine were thinking, why don't we have Black Lives Matter just have one person be the point person for all of Black Lives Matter in the US? So then we can go and speak to officials and speak to, you know, because there's that one point person you can speak to, but not just one, but like a team in case we're thinking of everything. The case is an assassination, and you have somebody else come, you know, we're thinking of everything. So we're just trying to think of ideas. What do you think?
I think it gets tricky because, you know, we've seen, so here's the thing we've seen with Black Lives Matter is that there is actually an organization. So that's what I'll start with is like, there's actually Black Lives Matter, the organization. There's, you know, the different chapters have different leadership, right? So the Black Lives Matter of Greater New York chapter, their founder, Shavana Newsom, just ran for she was beat by Richie Torres, but she just ran in the 15th in that race. But she's actually seen as like a spokesperson along with other leadership. But the thing is that the movement has also grown beyond that organization.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we have people who have embraced Black Lives Matter, not necessarily they're like in their local chapter or in the organization. Yeah. They're just like of the movement. I actually think that's okay and maybe even a good thing because I'm not for leaderless movement. I was part of Occupy and people of color at Occupy, and I like to say I've learned some lessons along the way because I don't actually think we can get very far with leaderless movement. But what we should strive towards is like leaderful movement, right? So we have multiple leaders. We have the ability for those who are participating to become leaders, and it just, you know, it helps it grow. I don't know how we address the frustration because I think history has shown us that unfortunately a lot of change is pretty slow. And that doesn't mean I think we should settle, because I think we should rail against the machine at every turn. But I also think we should just be sort of consciously aware that the revolution may be over time, and like see ourselves as part of this larger canon of struggle that has happened for generations and that like will continue going. Hopefully not over the same thing. Like hopefully like Black lives will still matter, and I'm sure like we won't dismantle all of white supremacy in my generation, but hopefully my kids are doing a different level of interrogating white supremacy than we are. Like hopefully it's going a step further, right? And I think like the hope piece and the love piece is missing. And I'm not sure exactly where we get to that, because it used to be, just being honest, I think historically it used to be replaced a lot with religion or faith, maybe not organized religion, maybe just say faith, right? So you had like an MLK, or even the people who are usually invisible, but were also big parts of that, Ella Baker, and you know, the history of Fannie Lou Hamer, and you know, even Shirley Chisholm. Like all of these are Black leaders who were very rooted in faith, you know. And I think to some extent the right has kind of like co-opted faith and then morphed it into this crazy ugly looking thing where you have you know, you have Trump like holding the Bible upside down, like on this, you know, like
finding the Bible.
It's like,
so angry.
Out of control.
It's out of control. It's out of control. And it doesn't have to be
never
religious.
read that damn book.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be religious. I think it can be like a larger faith, but you know, that belief that there's something more and it's possible, and like I
like that.
That's hard.
I like that you said that the hope, and you said hope and love. I feel that too, and I think it's coming from a place of people feeling hopeless and frustrated. Like, why are we still fighting over this? Like, why is this still an issue, you know? And I told somebody, I had to just be honest with him, because he had made a comment that made me think, well, he made a comment that was saying, he was telling somebody, I don't know, they were kind of going back and forth and agreeing with being hopeless in a situation. And I said, that's a dangerous thing. I said, hope is all we have. So when you do that, it just spreads like wildfire. And now nobody's going to feel that hope that we need. That's what's anchoring us in this movement. And I said, just do me a favor. Don't ever mention what you just told me to anyone, because it's not right. You know?
I wonder if that comes from feeling like, I know this is me in particular, I need action items, and it doesn't feel like there are major things happening with it, but like, what can I do? And I wonder if that's, again, like we've been talking about, a community-based thing, much like the Black Panthers did in the 70s, that you don't hear about. Like actual on the ground community work, which I'm certain there are people doing. But maybe there's a way to signal that to the larger, like, okay, this is still important, but and I think we're seeing that to some extent in our community, like with the community fridges and things like that. Because it feels small, but it isn't, to do something within your community. Even if it's taken a couple dozen eggs to the community fridge. Great. Here you go.
True.
Yeah. That's a tough one. Because I definitely go up and down in, like, not hopelessness, but like, oh God, it's not going to work. Oh, we're all, you know, like that I think is normal. But then talking to wonderful people who have good ideas makes makes your heart feel a little better. And we can do this. We can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to a march and going to a protest always helps me feel I can't even say that word. Feel energized because I come in and I'm like, oh man, like we're gonna be marching for like 3 hours, and then
and you don't even notice.
You don't even realize that you've been marching. Like Monday, we were marching for Jacob Blake, and we were marching for like easily 5 hours. We marched from like it was 59th to like Brooklyn, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, but amazing all at the same time. So yeah.
That's always my experience with marching too.
Yeah.
Same.
It's not until the end that you say, oh wow, my feet actually hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
I went to one this summer, and I am clearly a very pale white lady, and got overheated and like sat down on a curb, and immediately there were like 3 street medics in front of me, and I was like, I'm cool, I just need a Gatorade. But they like, and I realized like, oh, you're not in this alone.
Yeah.
That's what you're describing. Like there's this giant community, and I don't feel so alone after going to these things, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So keep going. Let's keep going.
Yeah. Keep it going.
And they're still happening. I feel like there's stuff happening every day. So that makes me feel better.
Mm-hmm.
I thought people would have given up by now, but they haven't, or not given up, or would have waned, but it hasn't. And that's good. That makes a difference in my heart.
Yeah, it's important to remind people of that too.
Yeah.
Forget that these things are still happening. And
Yeah.
it's still important to get out in the street and march and yeah.
I think the thing that's changed is the amount of people. It's not as many people as it was in the beginning, which we all knew that was going to happen, you know. Obviously when people go back to work and like so many different factors of why people don't come out, but even with the small group, I still feel good about coming out, and I feel the love and support are all around me, and I'm always like happy that that it went, you know. I'm never like, man, that was terrible. Like I never feel that ever, you know. So all right, well, we are towards the end of this talk. It's been a pleasure, ladies. Kristen, do you have any last thoughts?
Just thank you for coming, and you know, I appreciated the conversation. I even jotted down some notes of things that, you know, I think would be great, like for example, to make a statement around human trafficking, or to do some deeper work with the voting, the absentee voting. We talked about that, and you know, this conversation reminded me that we're going to explore that. So I appreciate that input, and the conversation was good. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Oh, we could stop